I was sitting in the back of a courtroom with my hood up, like I was hiding from the world, watching a delivery driver get called a thief by a man who owned half the town. And I realized something terrifyingly simple. If we lost today, he wasn't just going to prison. He was going to disappear. Not the dramatic kind of disappear. No movie-style van, no screaming, no headlines. The quiet kind. No job. No references, no apartment, no custody, no future. Just a name that turns into a warning label. And the worst part? The whole case was built on one small detail almost everyone would ignore. A stamp, a timestamp, a piece of tape on a box. One tiny thing that didn't match unless you knew exactly where to look. I'm going to tell you how we got here and how I turned a 7-day deadline into the most satisfying courtroom reveal I've ever witnessed. But first, comment where you're watching from. I'm serious. When a story like this hits, the comments turn into a jury. And I want to know how far this travels. Now, I need you to understand the type of billionaire I am. I'm not the guy who shows up, hands someone a check, and disappears into a private jet fog. I'm the guy who gets obsessed with systems. I'm creative, competitive, philanthropic, and I have limits, because the quickest way to waste money is to fix the symptoms and leave the machine running. So I run what my team calls backstage justice. Simple, visual challenges with real stakes. Not content challenges, real ones. Because when you put a system under a clock, it reveals the parts it's been hiding. This story started in the most ordinary place imaginable. A loading dock behind a luxury retail store. No music, no glitter, just concrete, pallets, and a security camera that mysteriously wasn't working the one time it needed to be. The guy at the center of it all, let's call him Eli, was a delivery driver for a local logistics company. He wasn't famous. He wasn't rich. He was the kind of person you forget exists until your package arrives on time. Early 30s, lean, always moving like he couldn't afford to waste a second, because when you're paid by route efficiency, time isn't money. Time is survival. Eli had a daughter. That detail matters because every decision he made was shaped by the fact that he had small hands waiting for him at home. He also had something else that mattered in a town like this. Pride, not ego. Pride. The kind that says, I work, I show up, I don't beg. And that pride is exactly what made him the perfect target. Because predators don't just target the weak, they target the honest. The story the town was told was simple and deliciously cruel. A $48,000 watch went missing from a shipment. Eli was the last person with it. So Eli must have stolen it. That's it. That was the case. And people ate it up the way small towns eat scandal. Slowly, repeatedly, and with a smile. Here's the part they didn't broadcast. The missing watch belonged to the son of a powerful family. A family that didn't just have money, they had leverage. They owned the logistics company. They owned the retail store. They owned the private security firm the store used. And they owned enough influence in the courthouse to make the air feel heavier when they walked in. Their heir, let's call him Camden, was the kind of man who believed consequences were for other people. He smiled like he'd never been told no, and when he did get told no, he treated it like a personal insult that needed to be punished. When Eli got arrested, Camden didn't just want Eli convicted. He wanted him humiliated, because the watch wasn't the point, control was. Now you might be asking, why did I care? I don't live in that town. I didn't know Eli. And no, I don't make a habit of dropping into random courtrooms like a bored superhero. But I have a program. Every month, my foundation runs what I call the Clean Exit Fund. It's designed for people stuck in unfair systems, wage theft, wrongful termination, predatory debt, false criminal accusations tied to employment. The rule is simple and visual. If you can prove you were targeted by an unjust system, and you're willing to follow a structured plan for 7 days, my team will fund your clean exit. Legal help, relocation if needed, job placement, debt stabilization. But the prove it part is important, because I don't want to reward people who got caught doing something stupid. I want to reward people who got caught in something rigged. Eli's case landed on my radar because my legal intake team flagged it as unusual. Not because of the watch, because of the speed. He was arrested within 24 hours of the alleged theft. His public defender got assigned and then immediately requested a plea deal. The retail store's footage was unavailable. The private security firm refused to release logs without a court order. And the owner's son, Camden, was already telling people loudly that Eli would rot. That's not normal. That's coordinated. So my team sent me a brief. Mara, my operations lead, the brain that keeps my chaos safe, walked into my office with a thin folder. "Wrongful accusation," she said. "How wrong?" I asked. Mara doesn't exaggerate. She just slides facts across the table and lets your blood pressure do what it does. She said, "We don't know yet, but the pattern looks like a setup." I flipped through the pages. Eli's mugshot was in the local paper. Not blurred, not subtle, full face, like they wanted his shame to be a warning sign. The headline read something like, "Local driver arrested in luxury theft." In a small town, that headline is a tattoo. Mara pointed to a paragraph. "They're claiming he scanned the package as delivered, then it disappeared." I frowned. "If it disappeared after delivery, how is that on him?" Mara tapped again. "They say he never delivered it. They say he falsified the scan." I leaned back. "Is that even possible without the device being in proximity?" Mara shrugged slightly. "Depends on the system, but here's the part that caught my eye." She pointed to the time. The scan time was listed as 9:17 p.m. I blinked. "That's late," Mara nodded. "Store closes at 7. I sat forward. Now my brain loves a mismatch, because mismatches are where truth leaks out. Mara continued, "The store claims they received an after-hours VIP delivery. And the watch was supposed to be in that," I said. "Right," Mara replied. "But their own store alarm log shows the back door wasn't opened at 9:17. I stared at her. "They have an alarm log?" Mara nodded. "We found a screenshot from a maintenance contractor who worked on their system last month. He posted about upgrading their security online." I exhaled slowly. That was the first open loop. If the door wasn't opened, how was the package delivered? Either the log was wrong or the story was wrong. And if the story was wrong, the accusation was built on a lie. I looked at Mara. "What do we do?" Mara didn't hesitate. "We interview him, quietly. No promises yet." So we did. We didn't go in as billionaire rescue. We went in as reality. I met Eli in a small attorney room at the jail. No glass wall, just a table bolted to the floor and the smell of cheap disinfectant. Eli walked in wearing an orange jumpsuit like it was a punishment he didn't deserve. His eyes went to me, then away, like he didn't want to hope, because hope can hurt worse than fear when it gets taken. I stood and offered my hand. He hesitated, then shook it. "Eli," I said, "I'm here because your case looks off." He gave a bitter half laugh. "Off is one word." I sat. Mara sat beside me. Eli sat across, shoulders stiff. I said, "Tell me what happened. Start at the beginning. Don't skip details." Eli's jaw clenched. "I had my route. Normal day, same stops. They added a VIP at the end, after hours." "Who added it?" I asked. Eli shook his head. "Dispatch. They said owner request." Owner. That word again. "Where was the delivery?" I asked. "The luxury store," he said. "Back door." "At 9:17? I asked. Eli's eyes sharpened. "No," he said immediately. "That's the thing. I was there around 6:40. Mara and I exchanged a glance. Eli continued. "Store was still open. I parked by the dock. A guy met me. He had a badge. He signed." "Signed where?" I asked. Eli tapped the table. "On my device." I held my face neutral, but my brain started running. If someone signed at 6:40, why is the scan time 9:17, unless the scan time was edited, or the device synced later, or someone else used his login? I asked, "Did you leave the device unattended?" Eli's eyes flicked down. "No," he said quickly, then hesitated. "Not fully." Mara leaned in slightly. "Explain," she said gently. Eli swallowed. "The guy asked to see the label. I turned. My device was in my hand, but I looked away. 2 seconds. 2 seconds is a lifetime when someone wants your identity." I nodded. "What did the guy look like?" Eli frowned, thinking. "Tall, clean suit. Not store staff. More like security." "Private security?" I asked. Eli nodded slowly. "Yeah, that vibe." Mara asked, "Did you recognize him?" Eli shook his head. I asked, "Did you take a photo of the package? Some drivers do for proof." Eli's face tightened. "Not allowed," he said. "Company policy, they say privacy." "Of course they do. Predatory systems hate documentation." I said, "After you delivered it, what happened?" Eli's eyes hardened. "Nothing. I finished my route. Went home." "And when did they call you?" Mara asked. Eli laughed without humor. "Next morning. They told me to come in, said there was an issue." "What kind of issue?" I asked. Eli's voice lowered. "They said the watch was missing. They said the store claims I never delivered it. They said my scan shows 9 to 17. They said I must have, I don't know, came back after hours and stole it." His voice cracked slightly, and he clenched his jaw like he was ashamed of his own emotion. I leaned back. The story they were pushing was bizarre. Come back after hours, fake a scan, steal a watch, and somehow still return the empty box. It didn't make sense, which meant the truth was probably simpler. Someone wanted the watch, someone had access, someone needed a scapegoat, and Eli was perfect, because he was the last link in the chain, the disposable link. I asked, "What did your lawyer say?" Eli's mouth twisted. "He said I should plead to avoid jail time. Said if I fight, they'll ruin me." That sentence is one of the most dangerous in the world, because it's how innocent people get convicted. I kept my voice calm. "Do you have any reason to believe they targeted you specifically?" Eli hesitated. Then he said, "Camden." Mara's eyes sharpened. I asked, "The heir?" Eli nodded. "He hates me." "Why?" I asked. Eli's eyes went distant. "Because I embarrassed him." That's when the story opened up. 3 months earlier, Eli had delivered something to Camden's house. Camden had come outside drunk, yelling at a neighbor. Eli had his daughter in the truck for a quick pickup because childcare fell through. Camden had stumbled near the truck, shouting, and Eli told him to back away from the child. Camden didn't like being told anything. He called Eli a nobody and tried to open the truck door. Eli shut it, hard. Not on Camden's hand, not assault, just firm. Camden backed up, rage in his eyes. Eli said, "Calm, my kid's in here." Camden sneered and said, "You don't get to talk to me like that." Eli replied, "Then don't act like that." Camden's face changed. That moment, being corrected by a person he considered inferior, was a wound to his ego, and ego wounds in rich heirs turn into vendettas. Eli finished, voice quiet. After that, my dispatch started giving me the worst routes. My supervisor started watching me. And now this. I sat still. This wasn't just about a watch. This was about punishment. I looked at Mara. Mara nodded almost imperceptibly. We both knew what we had to do. But before I offered anything, I asked the final question that matters in every case like this. "Eli," I said, "are you innocent?" Eli's eyes locked onto mine. "Yes," he said. No hesitation, no drama, just a solid, exhausted truth. I held his gaze for a beat. Then I said, "Okay, here's my challenge." His brow furrowed. I slid a single sheet of paper across the table. It wasn't a contract trap. It was my kind of document. Clear, direct, structured. Rule, 7 days. Goal, prove innocence through verifiable evidence. If he succeeded, my foundation would fund his legal defense fully, cover lost wages, stabilize housing, and secure a clean job placement outside the company's influence. Plus, if the system was corrupt, we would pursue accountability. If he failed, I would still pay for a thorough legal review, but I would not bankroll a lie. Eli stared at it. "You're doing this for what?" he asked, suspicious. I smiled slightly. "I'm doing it because I hate bullies," I said, "and because I'm competitive." He blinked. I leaned in. "Someone thinks they can write your life in permanent ink. I want to show them pencils exist." Eli swallowed hard. Then he said quietly, "What do I have to do?" I said, "You follow the plan. You tell the truth. You don't disappear into shame. You let my team work." He looked down at the paper, then back up. 7 days, he whispered. 7 days, I confirmed. He nodded once. And that was the moment the clock started. Now, here's the part that makes this story different from every fake courtroom drama you've ever seen. We didn't win with a surprise witness screaming. We didn't win with a last-minute confession. We won with boring things. Logs, timestamps, chain of custody. The kind of proof villains hate because it doesn't care about their status. Day one started with one goal: secure the digital trail before it could be lost. Because when powerful people control the narrative, evidence tends to vanish. My legal team filed immediate preservation requests, not polite emails, formal notices. To the logistics company, preserve Eli's device data, route logs, dispatch communications, scanner sync records. To the retail store, preserve security footage, alarm logs, door access logs, inventory chain of custody. To the private security firm, preserve guard shift logs, access badge records, incident reports. And because we didn't trust any of them, we also went outside. We pulled public traffic camera records along Eli's route. We pulled cell tower pings for Eli's device if the court would allow. We requested third-party GPS provider logs. We went after the truth from every angle, because truth is a net. But it wasn't just paperwork. We also had to protect Eli emotionally, because the system was already working on him. His daughter's mother, separate from him, was getting pressure from Camden's side, not direct threats, subtle ones. A neighbor suddenly worried about custody, a landlord suddenly concerned about stability, a supervisor casually mentioning, "This looks bad." The goal wasn't just conviction, it was isolation. So we wrapped Eli in structure. We secured a temporary family support advocate. We arranged childcare coverage. We ensured his rent was protected for the month, regardless of outcome. Because if you want an innocent person to fight, you have to keep them standing. Day 2 was when the first big obstacle hit. The logistics company claimed they couldn't access Eli's device logs because the device had been reassigned and reset. Reset. That word is a crime scene in corporate language. Mara called me immediately. "They wiped it," she said. "How?" I asked. "Remote management," she replied. "They claim it's routine." I closed my eyes for a second. If they wiped the device, they were either incompetent at a catastrophic level, or they were hiding something. I said, "Do we have backups?" Mara said, "We might, if the scanner systems sync to cloud before wipe, but CFO-level people at the company can restrict access." I asked, "Who owns the logistics company?" Mara didn't even need to look. Camden's family. Of course. The Fox owned the hen house, so we shifted. If the company wouldn't give us logs, we'd get the truth from everything around the logs. We tracked Eli's route through external cameras. We pulled receipts from the gas station he stopped at. We pulled time-stamped ATM footage if he withdrew money. We interviewed residents who saw the truck. We built a timeline so tight it could strangle a lie. And while we were doing that, Camden's team made their first public move. A local news segment aired a story about rising theft and community trust. They didn't mention Eli by name, but they showed his mugshot again. They framed it as public safety. That's a classic tactic. Turn one accusation into a moral panic so questioning it feels like betrayal. I watched the segment, then turned to Mara. "They're building a narrative," I said. Mara nodded, "which means they're scared." "Or confident," I replied. Mara's eyes were steady. "Confident people don't need propaganda." She was right. Day 3 was the first real breakthrough. Not the big one, the kind that opens a door. Our investigator, an ex-compliance auditor who loves details the way some people love romance, came back with something from the retail store's back dock. Not footage, they claimed it was unavailable, but something else, a maintenance report. Apparently, the store had a door sensor replaced the week before the VIP delivery, and the report included a test log. That test log showed the sensors recorded open events, with timestamps, including the day of the alleged theft. There was an entry at 6:42 p.m. Back door opened, back door closed. No entry at 9:17. So the store's claim of after-hours delivery was false, unless the sensor log was altered. But that log came from the maintenance contractor's system, not the store's. It was a third-party record, clean. I smiled when I saw it, not because it was funny, but because it was a crack in the wall. I told Mara, "That gets us probable cause for deeper discovery." Mara nodded. "And it matches Eli's memory." Then she paused. "There's more," she said. She showed me a photo, a grainy still from a nearby restaurant's exterior camera pointing toward the alley by the dock. You couldn't see the package clearly, but you could see Eli's truck. You could see him talking to someone, tall, in a suit, badge, security vibe, and the timestamp on the footage, 6:41 p.m., right on top of the door sensor entry. I leaned forward. "That's our mystery man." Mara nodded. "We're enhancing the image, but even without a face, we can match height, build, gait, and..." She tapped again. The mystery man was wearing a specific type of badge clip, the kind used by the private security firm contracted by the store. I sat back. Now we had a real direction. The private security firm was the connective tissue. If the guard signed for the package, then the guard had possession. If the guard had possession, then Eli didn't. And if the guard's logs were being withheld, then someone was protecting them. Day 4 was when Camden's team escalated from narrative to intimidation. Eli's mother, older woman, gentle, living in a small house, received a visit from a man in a suit. He didn't threaten her. He just advised her that her son should take the deal. He mentioned her mortgage. He mentioned her grandkid. He left his card. When Mara told me, my jaw tightened. That's the kind of move that makes me go from strategic to surgical. I said, "We stop playing defense." Mara nodded. "Agreed. So we set our counter-trap. And this is where my competitive side comes in. I don't like punching down. I don't like humiliating people for sport. But I love exposing hypocrisy in bright light, so I created a simple visual challenge around the truth. We announced, through my foundation, not through the town's media, that we were offering a community-proof reward. Rule: anyone with verifiable information about the chain of custody of the missing luxury shipment could submit evidence anonymously through our legal portal. If the evidence materially impacted the case, we would pay a reward and provide whistleblower protection support. This wasn't bribery. This was protection. Because people in small towns see things. They just don't speak because speaking has consequences. We also made one thing clear. We weren't paying for rumors. We were paying for proof. That announcement did two things immediately. It made honest people feel less alone, and it made guilty people panic. Within 6 hours, we received a message, no name, just a file upload. It was a photo of a shipping box, the luxury store's branded tape, and a detail that made my heart rate jump. The tamper evidence seal had a unique pattern, tiny microdots that most people wouldn't notice. But my investigator noticed immediately, because the seal pattern in the photo didn't match the seal pattern on the store's documented inventory receipt, meaning either the store had 2 different seal batches or someone swapped the box. My investigator looked at me and said, "If we can get the physical box from evidence, we can prove substitution." I nodded. Then Mara said, "The anonymous sender included a note." She read it aloud. "Look at the stamp. It's impossible." The stamp. That word again. I felt a slow smile. Because when multiple sources point to the same tiny detail, it's rarely coincidence. Day 5 was the day we chased the stamp. The prosecution's case hinged on the scan at 9:17 p.m. They claimed Eli scanned the package as delivered after hours, then stole it. We had already undermined the after-hours part with the door sensor log and restaurant camera, but we still needed to explain why the scan said 9:17. So we hunted the scan's origin. My tech team dug into the logistics company's scanner system documentation, not hacking, just legal research and expert analysis. We found something interesting. The scanners used a batch sync feature when connectivity was weak. Drivers could complete a scan, and the system would sync later when the device regained signal. And when it synced, the system could record either the scan time or the sync time, depending on configuration. If the company configured it poorly or intentionally, the recorded time could be the sync time, which could be hours later, meaning Eli could have scanned at 6:42. But the system logged it at 9:17 when it synced. That would explain everything, except why would it sync that late? Eli's route ended around 7:30. He would have been home by 8. Where would his device have regained signal at 9:17 unless someone else had the device? Or unless someone forced a sync? That's when we found the stamp. Not a literal stamp yet, a time stamp. The logistics company's server logs, accessible through a third-party vendor, showed a manual sync event triggered at 9:16 p.m. for Eli's device ID. Manual, meaning someone in the office with admin privileges forced the device to sync. Why? To make the delivery appear after hours, to match the narrative, to set the trap. My attorney practically whispered when she saw it, like she didn't want to scare the truth away. "This is intent," she said. I nodded, and I felt that cold satisfaction you feel when a bully finally leaves fingerprints. We still needed the final piece. Who triggered the manual sync? The log showed a user ID, but the user ID was a generic admin account. Of course it was. Cowards love generic accounts, but generic accounts still have metadata, IP addresses, workstations, login patterns, so we followed it. Day 6 was when the private security firm cracked. They refused to release guard logs without a court order. So we got a court order, and they complied partially. They delivered logs that were clearly edited, missing pages, duplicated signatures, time gaps. My investigator smiled when he saw it, the way a locksmith smiles when someone hands them a fake key. "They altered this," he said. "How can you tell?" I asked. He pointed to the ink. The signatures had the same pressure pattern, same flourish, like someone copied and pasted handwriting. He pointed to the time formatting. One entry used 6:42 p.m., another used 18:42 in the same shift log. That's not how real logs look. That's how reconstructed lies look. We subpoenaed the raw digital version, and that's when the firm's manager panicked and did something stupid. He called our hotline anonymously. Yes, the very hotline we set up to protect whistleblowers. He called and tried to negotiate. He said he had concerns about how far this would go. My counsel asked him one question. Who told you to edit the logs? Silence. Then a shaky breath. Then he said, "The owner's office," meaning Camden's family. That call was recorded legally with consent warnings. It was the first time someone outside our team confirmed the pressure, but we still needed the guard, the mystery man, the one who signed for the package. Because without him, Camden could claim, "I didn't know," and rich heirs love plausible deniability like it's cologne. Late on day 6, the guard came forward, not directly, through his sister. She submitted a message through our portal with evidence. Pay stubs, shift schedule, and a photo of the guard's badge clip matching the restaurant camera still. She said her brother was terrified. She said he'd been told he'd be handled if he spoke. Handled. That word should make your skin crawl because it's vague on purpose. We arranged a safe meeting with the guard, let's call him Ross, through our attorney and a union advocate. Ross arrived pale, sweating, eyes darting. He looked like a man who hadn't slept since the watch disappeared. He sat down and said, before anyone asked, "I didn't steal it." I held up a hand gently. "I'm not here to accuse you," I said. "I'm here to understand what happened." Ross's hands shook. "They said it would be easy," he whispered. "Who?" Mara asked softly. Ross swallowed hard. "Camden." There it was. Ross explained that Camden had asked him to handle a VIP delivery personally. Camden wanted the box to go through security, not store staff. Ross did what he was told because he needed the job. He met Eli at 6:42, signed for the package, and brought it inside. He placed it in the secure holding room. He logged it. Then Camden arrived, not through the front. Through the service corridor. Camden had access because he owned the place in every way that mattered. Camden told Ross to step out. Ross did. When Ross returned, the box was still there, but the seal looked different. Ross didn't say anything, because when your boss's son is the air you breathe, you don't question oxygen. Later, Camden told Ross the watch was missing and asked Ross to confirm the delivery was after hours. Ross hesitated. Camden smiled and said, "Do you want to keep your job?" Ross confirmed. Then Camden's office told the security firm to clean up logs. Ross watched his own shift record become fiction. And then, the final insult, Camden's team suggested Eli stole it. Ross wanted to speak then, but Camden's people reminded him he had a past misdemeanor, small, old, and that they could make it relevant. So Ross stayed quiet, until our proof-reward announcement and our whistleblower protections made him believe there was a way out. Ross finished, voice broken. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't want this to happen." I believed him, because guilt looks like fear and shame, not like confidence. I said, "Ross, if you testify, will you tell the truth?" Ross's eyes flicked up. "They'll ruin me," he said. I nodded. "They'll try," I said, "but you won't be alone." Ross swallowed. "I'll do it," he whispered. And that was the moment we had the case. But here's the catch. We were on day 6, trial was day 7, and Camden wasn't stupid enough to let a guard walk into court and ruin his plan. So we had one night to protect Ross, secure his testimony, and finalize the stamp, the proof that would destroy the fake timeline. Day 7 began before sunrise. The town woke up thinking it was going to see a delivery driver get crushed. They didn't know they were about to watch a machine break. Eli was transported to court in a wrinkled suit that didn't fit right because it wasn't his. He looked small next to Camden's legal team. Camden arrived in a tailored suit with a smirk like he was attending a fundraiser, not a man's life. I arrived like a nobody. No entourage, no flashy car, just me, Mara, and our attorney in the back row. Because this wasn't about my presence, this was about the truth. And truth doesn't need spotlight. It needs a microphone at the right moment. The prosecution began with confidence. They held up a photo of the watch model. They talked about breach of trust. They implied Eli had financial problems. They painted him as a guy who couldn't resist. Camden watched like he was enjoying a show. Eli sat rigid, jaw clenched, eyes forward. Then the prosecution introduced their key evidence, the scan at 9:17 p.m. They said, this is when he delivered it, after hours, when no one could see him. They implied Eli created the perfect window. It was neat, too neat. Our attorney cross-examined the store manager. She asked about the door. The manager said it was opened for VIP. Our attorney presented the third-party sensor log. The manager's face tightened. I don't recognize that. Our attorney calmly explained it was from the maintenance contractor. The manager stumbled. The judge leaned forward. The prosecution objected. The judge allowed it. The first crack opened. Then our attorney presented the restaurant camera still. The manager squinted, tried to dismiss. Our attorney asked, is that a security guard with your contracted firm's badge clip? The manager hesitated, then said, possibly. Possibly is courtroom language for, yes, but I don't want to admit it. The prosecution tried to recover by emphasizing the scan time again. And that's when our attorney said the sentence that flipped the room. Your Honor, the scan time is not the scan time. The courtroom murmured. The judge raised a hand for silence. Our attorney explained the batch sync configuration. She explained how a manual sync could cause the log to show 9:17. The prosecution scoffed, tried to dismiss it as technical speculation. So our attorney called our expert witness, a neutral third-party systems analyst. He testified calmly. The system log showed a manual sync event at 9:16 for Eli's device ID. The prosecution's face tightened. The expert explained, manual sync requires admin access. The judge asked, who triggered it? The expert said, the log shows a generic admin account. The prosecutor smiled slightly, relieved, because generic accounts are clouds, hard to pin. Then our attorney said, we can pin it. And this is where the stamp finally revealed itself, not just digital, physical. Because while everyone was obsessed with the scan time, we had been obsessed with something else, the package label. The shipping label had a printed timestamp, not the scan. The printer timestamp embedded in the barcode line, the kind of microprint that indicates when the label was generated and when it was reprinted. Most people don't know that exists. Even many lawyers don't. But my investigator did, because he's the kind of person who reads microprint like bedtime stories. We had subpoenaed the label data from the third-party shipping label provider, and it showed something insane. The label had been reprinted at 9:12 p.m., reprinted, meaning someone generated a second copy of the same delivery label hours after the original delivery. Why reprint? Because you want a new label for a new box, a swapped box, a cover. And the reprint event had metadata, a workstation ID. That workstation ID belonged to a computer in the logistics company's dispatch office, not Eli's device, not the store. Dispatch, which was owned by Camden's family. Our attorney introduced the label reprint record. The courtroom leaned in. The judge asked the expert, can labels be reprinted without driver knowledge? The expert said, yes, anyone with access to the account can reprint. It would create a record. The judge asked, and this record shows 9:12 p.m. Yes, the expert replied. The prosecution objected, flustered. The judge overruled. Camden's smirk vanished for the first time. His jaw tightened. Then our attorney delivered the next punch. The door didn't open at 9:17. The label was reprinted at 9:12. The system was manually synced at 9:16. Someone was manufacturing a timeline. Silence, then murmurs. The prosecution tried to regroup by attacking Eli. They said even if there were system anomalies, the package still went missing under his responsibility. That's when our attorney said, we have the chain of custody. And she called Ross, the guard. When Ross walked into the courtroom, Camden's face changed. Not anger, fear, because Camden recognized him. Ross took the oath, hands shaking. He looked at Eli once, a quick glance of apology. Then he looked at the judge, and he told the truth. He testified he met Eli at 6:42. He signed for the package. He placed it in the secure room. He testified Camden arrived and asked him to step out. He testified the seal looked different after. He testified he was pressured to confirm an after-hours timeline. He testified the logs were altered under instruction. The prosecution tried to shred him. They brought up his past misdemeanor. Ross admitted it. They suggested he was lying for money. Ross's voice broke when he said, "I'm lying for sleep." The room went still. Our attorney asked one final question. "Ross, did Eli steal the watch?" Ross looked at Eli, then at the judge. "No," he said firmly. "He delivered it. I took it. And after that, Camden's people controlled what happened." Camden's lawyer stood, objecting, voice sharp. The judge silenced him. Camden's face was pale now. His eyes darted. And I knew, right then, that Camden would try to slip out of accountability. Because rich heirs don't go down unless you lock every exit. So we did. Our attorney introduced the final piece, the anonymous photo of the Tampa Seal microdots compared to the store's inventory record. Our expert testified the patterns didn't match, meaning the box in evidence was not the box Eli delivered, meaning substitution, meaning staging, meaning fraud. The judge stared at Camden's counsel. The prosecutor's face looked like someone had yanked the floor out from under him. And then something happened that I didn't expect. The judge asked Camden's side to approach, quiet conversation at the bench. Then the judge looked up and said, in clear voice, "In light of the evidence presented, this court finds that the state has failed to meet its burden. The charges are dismissed." For a second, Eli didn't move, like his brain didn't trust reality. Then he exhaled. A sound I will never forget. Not a cheer, not a sob, a release. Like a weight falling off a man's chest. Eli's knees buckled slightly, and he grabbed the table to steady himself. Our attorney touched his shoulder. Ross looked like he might faint. Camden sat frozen. Dismissed wasn't just a win, it was a public undoing. And that's when Camden did exactly what bullies do when they lose control. He tried to rewrite the story in real time. He stood abruptly. He said loud enough for the room, "This is insane. That driver is a criminal. Everyone knows it." Eli's head turned slowly. The courtroom held its breath. Our attorney looked like she was about to intervene, but Eli spoke first, and his voice was steady. "No," Eli said. "You wanted me to be." Camden's eyes flashed. "You think you won?" Camden spat. Eli didn't raise his voice. He said, "I think you finally got told no." The room went silent. Camden's lawyer tugged his sleeve, trying to get him to sit. Camden jerked away, furious. And then, because the universe loves justice, an officer approached Camden quietly, not with handcuffs, with a card, a notice. Because while we were proving Eli's innocence, my legal team had been filing a separate complaint with the State Attorney General's office about evidence tampering and corporate misconduct. The officer said calmly, "Sir, you're being served." Camden's face twisted. He snatched the card like it was an insult. And in that moment, the entire town saw something they'd never seen before, a powerful heir being treated like a regular person. That was the real victory, not the dismissal, the equality. Now you might think the story ends there. Courtroom win, roll credits, happy music. But that's not how systems work. Because even when you win the case, you still have to win the life. Eli walked out of the courthouse to a crowd. Some people looked ashamed. Some looked curious. Some looked annoyed, like justice inconvenienced them. Camden's supporters tried to whisper that Eli got lucky. I hate that phrase. Lucky is when you find a $20 bill. Justice is when you fight through a machine designed to crush you. I approached Eli outside. He looked at me like he couldn't decide whether to laugh or cry. He said, "I don't even know what to say." I smiled. "Say you want to go home," I replied. Eli swallowed. "I want to see my daughter." "Good," I said. "Let's make sure you can." Because the system still had traps. His employer could still let him go. His landlord could still raise rent. The town could still poison his reputation. So we executed the Clean Exit Fund exactly as promised. First, immediate legal expungement assistance, get the arrest record sealed where possible. Second, wage replacement for the time he was incarcerated. Third, relocation option if he wanted to leave town. Fourth, job placement with a logistics company not owned by Camden's network. Fifth, family stabilization, childcare, transportation, a buffer so he didn't fall back into survival mode. Eli asked quietly, "Do I have to leave?" I didn't answer for him. I said, "You get to choose, and that, more than money, is what justice gives back. Choice." Ross, the guard, was shaking outside the courthouse, looking like he expected to be punished for telling the truth. I approached him too. He flinched slightly. I said, "You did the right thing." Ross's eyes filled. "They'll fire me." "Probably," I said honestly. "So we planned for that." Ross blinked. Mara stepped in and handed him a card. "We'll cover temporary wages," she said, "and we'll connect you with a security job in a different county, if you want it." Ross's mouth trembled. "Why would you help me?" I looked at him. "Because you stopped being a tool," I said. "And you became a person." Ross let out a shaky breath like he'd been holding it for months. Now, here's the epilogue that makes this story matter beyond one man. The state investigation didn't stop at Camden. It went into the logistics company's dispatch practices. It went into the retail store's private security logs. It went into the use of generic admin accounts. And because we had hard evidence, manual sync events, label reprints, altered logs, third-party door sensor records, Camden's family couldn't bury it. As he said, she said. It was paper. And paper doesn't care who your father is. Camden tried to settle quietly. My team refused quiet, not because we wanted spectacle, because quiet settlements are how systems survive. They pay to keep the machine intact. We pushed for structural outcomes, mandatory audit of delivery scan systems, unique admin accounts with traceable access, independent oversight on evidence retention when accusations involve employee theft, whistleblower protection policies, and a public apology. Not because apologies fix everything, but because public acknowledgement is a scar the system can't hide. Eli got that apology. It didn't erase the pain, but it shifted the town's memory from "maybe he did it" to "they tried to do it to him." And that shift is everything. 3 months later, I visited Eli, not in that town's courthouse shadow, but in a new place. He had chosen not to leave the state, but he moved one county over. He got a new job. He had a small apartment with sunlight, the kind of place that feels like breathing room. His daughter ran around the living room with a toy truck, pushing it along the floor. Eli watched her like he was still learning he was allowed to be present. He looked at me and said, "I still get angry." "I know," I replied. He said, "Sometimes I wake up and I'm back in that cell." I nodded. "That's normal," I said. "Your body remembers traps." Eli swallowed. "How do you not lose it?" I smiled slightly. "I do lose it," I said. "I just lose it into plans." Eli laughed quietly for the first time I'd heard. Then he said, "If you hadn't shown up," I cut him off gently. "If you hadn't told the truth," I said. "None of it matters. You did the hardest part." He looked down, then whispered, "I didn't think anyone would care." I felt that familiar tightness in my chest. "I care," I said, "because if this can happen to you, it can happen to anyone who doesn't own the room." Eli nodded slowly. His daughter ran up and grabbed his hand. "Daddy," she said, "watch." She held up her toy truck and made it deliver a tiny box to him. Eli's eyes watered. He took the box, smiled and said, "Delivered." And that's when I knew the system had failed at its real goal. Because it hadn't just wanted to convict him. It had wanted to take the word "delivered" away from him forever. One more thing before I let you go, because I want the comments on this. If you were on the jury of public opinion, would you want Eli to stay and rebuild his reputation in that town? Or would you tell him to take the clean exit and never look back? Team stay or team leave? Pick one and tell me why.